Happy Aloha Friday, F9. How is everybody doing? I hope you're all getting ready for a weekend together with your family. Today we're going to read chapter 10 of The Sign of the Beaver. He felt weak with relief when next morning Etienne walked swiftly into the cabin and sat down at the table. Stumbling over himself, he set about the lesson. As soon as he could, he picked up Robinson Crusoe. In the night, he had carefully thought out just what he was going to say, if Etienne ever gave him another chance. Now he had to talk fast because he could see that Etienne was set against hearing any more of this book. "Let me go on," he pleaded. "It's different from now on. Friday, that's what Robinson Crusoe named him, doesn't kneel any more." "Not slave?" "No," Matt lied. After that they get to be, well, companions. They share everything together." Ignoring the suspicion on Etienne's face, Matt began hurriedly to read. He was thankful that he knew the book so well that he was able to see when trouble might be coming. One of the first words Crusoe taught his man Friday was the word master. Luckily, he caught that one in time. And it was true. Crusoe and his new companion did go about together, sharing their adventures. Only, Matt thought, it would have been better, perhaps, if Friday hadn't been quite so thick-headed. After all, there must have been a thing or two about that desert island that a native who had lived there all his life could have taught Robinson Crusoe. When Matt closed the book, Etienne nodded. Then, as so many times before, he took Matt by surprise. "You like go fish?" he asked. "I sure would," Matt said gratefully. Stepping back to pick up his fish pole from beside the door, he ran to overtake the Indian boy, who strode ahead. He knew his grin was stretching from one ear to the other, but he couldn't hide his feelings as Etienne did. They walked some distance, Matt managing to keep pace with the Indian's swift stride, determined not to let Etienne know that his ankle was aching. They seemed to be following no particular trail. Finally, they came out on a part of the creek that Matt had not seen before. It was shallow here, studded with rocks and pebbles, so that the water rippling over them made little rapids or collected in quiet pools. Here Etienne stopped, broke off a sapling, and instead of making a fish pole, drew his knife from his pouch and quickly shaved a sharp point, making a spear. Then he stepped gently into the stream. Matt stood watching. Etienne stood motionless, peering intently into a pool of clear water. All at once he stooped, darted his spear with one quick stroke, and came up with a glittering fish. He studied it for a moment. Too small, he decided. To Matt's astonishment, he spoke to the fish quite solemnly. A few incomprehensible words, then tossed it back into the stream. In a few moments he had speared another, which he judged large enough to keep. "Do same," he ordered now, coming back to the bank. He handed Matt the spear. He would just look ridiculous, Matt knew before he started. He waded in and stood up to his knees, looking down into the sliding water. Presently a fish darted past. At least he thought it was a fish. It was hard to tell which was shadow and which might be a fish. At any rate, it was gone before he got his spear into the water. Presently he saw another, this one quite definitely a fish, calmly drifting in the pool. He jabbed at it hopelessly. He was sure his stick actually touched the slippery thing. He lunged at it, lost his footing, and went down with a splash that would scare off any fish for miles around. When he came up dripping, he saw Etienne watching him with a horrid grin. Suddenly he felt hot in spite of the icy water. Why had Etienne brought him out here anyway? Had Etienne just wanted to show off his own cleverness and to make Matt look more clumsy than ever? Was this Etienne's answer in case Matt had any idea in his head about being a Robinson Crusoe? For a moment, Matt glared back at Etienne with a scowl as black as any Indian's. Then he wiped his nose with the back of his hand and sloshed back to the bank. He snatched up his own pole and line. He poked about under the wet leaves and found a good juicy worm and fitted it to his hook. "I'll do it on my own," he said. "I can catch plenty of fish with this, and that's what matters." Etienne sat on the bank and watched. To Matt's satisfaction, in no time there was a tug on the line, a strong one. An impressive-looking fish rose to the surface, thrashing fiercely. Matt gave a jerk, and the line came swinging out of the water so suddenly that he almost lost his footing again. It was empty. "Fish broke line," Etienne observed. As if anyone couldn't see that. Furious at Etienne, at the fish, and at himself, Matt examined the break, unable to face the Indian. He had lost more than a good fish. His hook had disappeared as well. The only hook he had. Of course Etienne noticed. Those black eyes never missed anything. "Make new hook," he suggested. Without even getting to his feet, he reached out and broke a twig off a maple sapling. Out came the crooked knife again. In a few strokes he cut a piece as long as his little finger, carved a groove around the middle, and whittled both ends into sharp points. Now he stepped into the water and tied Matt's line expertly around the groove. "Put on 2 worms," he said. "Cover up all hook." He didn't offer to find the worms. Matt had lost all interest in fishing. He knew that somehow or other he could just provide more amusement for Etienne. But he couldn't refuse. He didn't have to wait long before another fish caught hold. This time he landed it neatly. "Good," said Etienne from the bank. "Big." Matt was trying to get it off the line. "He swallowed the whole hook," he said. "Better white man's hook," Etienne said. "Turn around inside fish, not get away." Back on the bank, Matt slit the fish and extracted the hook and his line. But the thin twig had broken in half. "Easy make new hook," Etienne said. "Make many hooks." Of course, looking down at the simple thing in his hand, Matt realized that he never again need worry about losing a hook. He could make a new one wherever he happened to be. It was another necessary thing that Etienne had shown him, just as he had made the snare. He wasn't sure why Etienne had bothered, but grudgingly he had to admit that Etienne had proved to him once again that he didn't always have to depend on white man's tools. All at once he was hungry. The sun was straight overhead, and it would be a long tramp back through the woods before he could cook his fish. Now he saw that Etienne had the same thought. The Indian was heaping up a small pile of pine needles and grass. He drew from his muskrat skin pouch a piece of hard stone with bits of quartz embedded in it. Striking it with his knife, he soon had a spark, which he blew into a flame. I could have done that myself, Matt thought. In fact, he had done it many a time, but he had not realized that he could use a common stone as well as his flint. "Get fish ready," Etienne ordered now, pointing to the 2 fish on the bank. Matt did not like his masterful tone, but he did as he was told. By the time he had the 2 fish split and gutted and washed in the creek, Etienne had a fire blazing. Matt was curious to see how he would go about the cooking. He watched as Etienne cut 2 short branches, bending them first to make sure they were green. He trimmed and sharpened them rapidly. Then he thrust a pointed end into each fish from head to tail. A small green stick was set crosswise inside the fish to hold the sides apart. He handed 1 stick to Matt, one on each side of the fire. The 2 boys squatted and held their sticks to the blaze. From time to time, Etienne fed the fire with dry twigs. When the flesh was crisp and brown, they ate, still silently. Matt licked his fingers. His resentment had vanished along with his hunger. "Golly," he said, "that was the best fish I ever ate." "Good," said Etienne. Across the fire, he looked at Matt, and his eyes gleamed. He was laughing again, but somehow not with scorn. "What did you say to that fish you threw back?" Matt was still curious. "I say to him not to tell other fish," Etienne said seriously. "Not scare away." "You actually think a fish could understand?" Etienne shrugged. "Fish know many thing," he replied. Matt sat, pondering this strange idea. "Well, it seemed to work," he said finally. "At least the other fish came along." A wide grin spread slowly across Etienne's face. It was the first time Matt had seen him smile.